If you have an agent, whether you love them or you hate them, you should be asking for your submission report regularly. You can request them at any time, and honestly, with dance, it is a little bit harder just because a lot of submissions and auditions come through via email and not casting platforms. But regardless, still ask for yours. Now, there are two reasons that you should be asking for your submission report. Number one is to make sure that you're actively being submitted to projects. And then more importantly, number two, so that you can make yourself more marketable. Now we're going back to my favorite word, research. When you have your submission report, you can do a full audit of yourself. So asking questions like, what roles am I being submitted to? And of those, what roles am I getting callbacks and bookings on? So submission reports actually show you a few things: the submission date, the project name, the role, the age range, the casting director, and then whether or not you got an audition from that submission. You can and should use all of this information. So we're going to start with the submission date. I mainly just use this to see how marketable a client is. This industry goes through waves. Last summer, Asians were pretty much not getting anything, so some days were very, very dry for them. The same thing happened with blondes. There were a few months late last year and early this year, and for them, it was just absolutely dead. But the opposite can give me just as much information. Now, while my blondes weren't getting very much, my brunettes were getting a ton of stuff. So that told me that it wasn't necessarily a Caucasian thing, it was more of a hair color thing. Regardless of what the data tells us, good or bad, it opens up my eyes, and honestly my clients' eyes as well, to the opportunities that are out there for your specific demographics. Let's move on to project name. It's always cool to see the projects that you've been submitted for. I think for a lot of my clients, seeing A-list artists and music festivals and huge brands is really exciting. But when it comes to this column, I care much more about the production type and the brand or artist culture. Now, what do I mean by this? So let's say on Tuesday, you were submitted for a Walmart commercial, an Alex Warren music video, a DoorDash commercial, an Adidas print campaign, and a Kiki Palmer music video. First of all, out of all 5 of these projects, 2 commercials, 2 music videos, and 1 print, which did you get auditions on? Some people tend to get more commercials, others music videos, and others print. Now, that's not to say you have to pigeonhole yourself and only try for those kinds of jobs, but it does give you insight into where you are the most marketable. Now, we can also look at these projects very specifically. So likely, the dancers who got callbacks on Alex Warren probably won't get one on Kiki Palmer and vice versa. Again, that's not to say it's impossible, but it does tell you how casting views you based on your materials that you're providing. The same thing goes for Walmart versus Adidas. Walmart is giving a very wholesome and outgoing vibe, whereas Adidas tends to be obviously athletic and a little bit more creative. Now, how can you use all of this data for yourself? Well, first of all, are you happy with it? If so, lean into it. If you like the brands and the artists that you're attracting currently, strengthen your reels and your headshots to fully encompass that vibe. Now, if you're on the opposite spectrum and you don't like what you're seeing, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. If you're attracting Walmart and DoorDash, but you want to be doing music videos with Kiki Palmer, we've got a pretty big disconnect here. Now, I'm not a manager, so I'm not going to go and step on any toes here. But if you are being perceived as an artist that you don't necessarily feel connected with, it's time for you to rebrand. Now, the last note that I'll mention here is to also take your agent into account here. About a year ago, I signed a girl. When I signed her, I understood that artist-based projects were what she wanted to do. Not that she was opposed to doing other work, but that was kind of her big goal that she had. However, after I started submitting her for projects, it became very, very obvious to me that she was more marketable in the commercial setting. She was getting tons of auditions as well as actual bookings for companies like Adidas and Starbucks. The problem is that one day she just started declining auditions pretty much out of nowhere. She had been a really great client up to that point, so I really didn't sweat her too much. But then after 5 declines, I couldn't ignore it anymore. So I reached out to her. She told me that she no longer wanted to prioritize commercials and wanted to put her focus solely on artist work. Now, for me as an agent, I'm kind of left feeling a little bit torn. On one hand, I have submitted her to music videos and tours and festivals over this past year, and she hasn't been able to get a booking with that. So if she's no longer willing to do commercial, which is what is paying her bills, I'm not sure that I really have anything to offer her. Not to mention now we have this communication issue and just resorting to declining auditions out of nowhere. So long story short, your submission report has so much value in it, but it's also up to you to use it correctly. All right, next up we have role. So this column isn't the most helpful usually, but it just kind of depends. So for me, as I go through, some literally just say female or model or dancer. So without me going through and pulling up the full breakdown, it's impossible to say what style of dance they were looking for, or whether there was a height or a measurement requirement, or even if an ethnicity was specified. But on occasion, it will say ballet dancer or hip hop dancer. Sometimes it'll even say the special skill that they were looking for. So basketball player, roller skater, yoga instructor. Again, this column really isn't the most reliable, but if it does have anything specific, you can see where you're most marketable. So for example, I have a roller skater on my roster, and during one of our recent meetings, I asked her if it would be possible to add a roller skate video or a reel to her profile. She asked me why, so I showed her. Over the past 3 months, she had been submitted to a total of 7 roller skate projects, and she did not get a single callback. Meanwhile, the other 2 roller skates that I have been submitting to the exact same projects as her, also they do have roller skate reels on their profile. They have received auditions on every single submission, which is crazy in and of itself. She literally just had no idea how marketable that skill was. So the moral of the story, if you pull up your submission report and you see that you've submitted to a handful of soccer player or violinist or whatever special skill, that should tell you that that skill is marketable right now, and you should probably make it a point to update your profile with that kind of material as soon as possible. The market moves quick, so you don't want to miss out. Okay, up next we have age range. So people get very, very touchy about this. A lot of people have asked me, why are you submitting me for the 30 to 40 age range? Well, because look at your auditions. You get far more callbacks when I submit you for mom roles and 30 plus roles than you do when I submit you for college roles or 20 plus roles. Now, some people really can play every single age. So if your submission report does support that, then yeah, make sure you have headshots that can fully showcase that so that your agent can go through and basically just pick the best one for each role in each production. But most people are not like that. So if you tend to only get callbacks in a specific age range, maybe your money is better spent investing in headshots that make you look that age. All right, now we're going to move on to casting director. This one is so important, and a lot of people use this information very wrong. If you notice that the same casting director auditions you for every one of their projects, this does not mean that you DM them on Instagram asking why they haven't cast you yet. Please do not do that. Honestly, it just means that they like you and haven't found the perfect project for you yet. So what can you do with that information? Number 1, you can get a coach who has worked with or knows that casting director. That way your training is essentially preparing you for what that specific casting director is looking for. Number 2, you can do some more research. You now have the spot name, so you can head into YouTube and see if that commercial or whatever the project was has been released. And then you can see who got that role and what choices did they make. And number 3, you can do nothing. At the end of the day, casting directors usually don't make final decisions. They'll go through the audition, the callback, and the avail process and then pick their top however many people to present to the director. And then it's the director who makes the final choice. So it sometimes doesn't even matter how much you impress the casting director. Sorry, that sounded very cynical. I guess I just mean that this column is important, but don't rearrange your life over this. Alrighty, and lastly, we have the audition column. We have talked about this column basically in all of the other previous columns as well. But what I want to talk about here though are rates. Math is hard, so let's just use 100 submissions to keep life easy. If you have at least 3 to 5 auditions out of those 100 submissions, that feels pretty healthy to me. You could still definitely strengthen your materials, but it is a good number. Now, if you have 6 to 8 auditions, that is very strong. And if you have more than 8, you are probably my favorite client. However, I do want to preface this by saying that I do not know other agencies' rates. And I can only speak to commercial work and dance-specific artist work. I honestly couldn't tell you the average for theatrical or modeling agencies or anybody else. Now, if you're on the opposite end of the spectrum and you're under the 3% audition rate, honestly, you probably need new headshots. Most first-round commercial castings are photo-based, so if you aren't getting auditions on at least 3% of the submissions, it's probably your headshots. Some other things that you could consider would be your overall profile. So if you don't have your special skills listed, or you're missing your legal age or your measurements, that could also be hindering you. But 9 times out of 10, I see that new headshots make the biggest difference. Okay, and then lastly, you have to start the dialogue with your agent. Why am I not successful in these roles? Why do I get submitted on so many of these? Maybe my goals have changed. What can we switch up? At the end of the day, maybe they'll be receptive, maybe they won't, but at least you're keeping them in the loop with how you're feeling. I won't say every agent, but I do feel like a good agent should be able to give you reasons for the things that they do. For example, agents submit in bulk. So for me personally, I can see pretty clearly what headshots are catching attention. I can see what ethnicities are booking the most. I can see the energy or the skill set that they're asking for the most. We have the insight, and most of the time we can talk you through whatever it is that you're feeling. Maybe it's something we can accommodate or maybe not. But you do have to start the dialogue to at least see. All right, so if you're going to take anything away from this video, go ask for your submission report today. Thanks so much for watching. As always, if you have topic ideas, questions, or anything else that you would like to see from me, please leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.